I wanted to do another update on Korean. I'm making some adjustments on how I study. I tried thinking in Korean a little bit for a couple of days, but haven't really kept it up. I think it would be a good habit to do just like Anki, and I'm very sure it would help me become more fluent at the very least. It seems good, but a bit tiring and not something I'm going to do very aggressively right now. Just a little bit every day, I think, is plenty. A couple of minutes, even. I've been pretty motivated about Korean in general last week. After my last update, I of course did some flashcard cramming, but also continued looking on YouTube mostly for videos on how to study Korean better. I watched a video by Yoga MIA. Actually, I watched several of his videos as well as some others. Sometimes you read about someone else's experience studying Japanese and you think, this must be an exaggeration of what really happened. He went from basically zero to N1 in 3 years, possibly less than 3 years, but he didn't take the test until 3 years later. If he were Chinese, that would be one thing, but he's not. Well, I know I went about learning Japanese the hard way, so maybe that's why it took me so long. But I digress. The video I linked below discusses his thoughts on spaced repetition sentence cards. He's very much in favor of them, and it's a good listen. I say listen because he chose not to video himself reading his short essay on it. I will say that was probably a very good idea because his delivery was much stronger than his other videos. After watching his video, I pretty much decided to go back to sentence cards using howtostudykorean.com for most of the sentence mining, as it's the only resource I know of with tons of sentences for beginner intermediate learners. I'm still very intrigued with the speed review method I was trying out, but I'm finding it's really not good for newly learned material and not if you're not ready to really focus. It's particularly not good for sentences that aren't I+1. It's inevitable that you will need more time to puzzle over those cards. In Matt's video, he discussed why he was so much against pure vocabulary flashcards as opposed to sentence cards too. However, neither of them really discussed the option of doing both. I'm choosing not to do Evita's deck at the moment, another flip-flop, but I am experimenting with another deck based on the book Essential Korean Vocabulary published by Tuttle. It has 8,000 words per the description. I have it in PDF form and I'm using that to make flashcards. It's organized by topic and I'm trying out putting the topic chapter on the card as well to give me a little hint as to what the word means. Just a little, but maybe it will make doing reviews a little more easier and less tiring. I still think Anki is a really good tool for learning, but as I watched Matt's video going over MIA, it discussed the importance of immersion and how that is where the real learning takes place. And Anki or SRS is just a small supplement to speed learning up a bit. From my experience, when I changed or improved how I immersed in a foreign language is when I made better progress. Changing up my flashcards really didn't matter. I've done both sentence and vocabulary flashcards, probably more vocabulary than anything, but both, and I didn't think it truly mattered which one I did. With sentence flashcards, in effect, it's like studying off a graded reader in a lot of ways. You're only reading sentences that have one new word per sentence and the grammar isn't too much above you if you get proper sentences. Matt said by using Anki you can forego having to do the graded reader method, but to me you're just substituting one for the other. That said, aside from English, most languages do not have many graded readers available, so that makes a tool like Anki very nice, I think. Oh, I stumbled on this crazy log about an Australian guy, I think, learning Swedish. He had experience with German and had done all the Pimsleur courses for Swedish and wanted to strengthen his vocabulary before moving on to the rest of the language and basically doing native material, I guess. Anyway, he got a frequency list of sorts from a vocabulary book. It started with the first 3,000 vocabulary words. He made all production cards with English on one side and Swedish on side two. He went through the deck adding 200 new cards per day. His study time varied, but it was roughly about 2 hours a day, sometimes 3 hours or so, but 2 hours seemed standard. He would post brief statistical entries like study time 192 minutes, reviews, etc. He said he used mnemonics to create a hook for each card and then it stuck generally. Basically, he related the word to a German or English word or maybe another Swedish word he knew or maybe used another mnemonic, but it didn't seemed he had to try very hard. He did the 3,000 words and then moved on to the next 3,000 and then the next 3,000. I believe he took about 2 weeks between the sets to get his daily reviews down a bit before going back to adding 200 new cards a day. A few other people following his log tried to duplicate what he was doing, but nobody could. It made me think of the doctor I saw spending about 2 hours a day on Anki doing 1,000 reviews. Some people are just really good at remembering things. I don't think that's going to work for me, unfortunately. Yeah, so I was mentioning before, getting totally sidetracked, the real learning is in engaging native material. There's the option of learning where someone will just go at native material or maybe a textbook before taking on native material, not doing any rote learning really, but just using a dictionary to look up stuff as he encounters unknown words. He doesn't save the words for later study, just moves on, absorbing more and more native material. This is how I studied German, Spanish, and French. Rote learning just didn't stick for me, but if I read a book or listened to radio, internet programs, then somehow things would slowly start to stick. It's not that I didn't try rote learning, but that it failed me so horribly that I eventually gave it up. I would make word lists and study them for a few days, maybe even a week, then go back to them later, a month later, and only remembered a few words. It seemed to me I would have remembered those particular words without writing them down and making an effort to try to remember them by rote. I thought I had a great learning method, but then I tried learning Japanese, and that didn't work for me. I just couldn't engage native material. Well, I could watch subbed anime, that was it, and take classes and do Anki, and be very patient, very, very patient. I think maybe I should have engaged the native material more despite the difficulties instead of relying on Anki. Anki kept me moving forward though when nothing else seemed it would at least. Studying Japanese, I think, made me too reliant on spaced repetition flashcards. I think I need to make it the supplemental tool and force myself to engage Korean head on. I've given this some thought. When I watched Japanese anime with English subs, I of course tried some to hear the Japanese while reading the English to understand what was happening. I was very bad at connecting the English to the Japanese I listened to, I think mostly because the word order is so different. I'm used to subject, object, verb, postposition languages now, so that's less of an issue. But I still think that my Korean would be better served if I just turned off the subs. I'll be very reliant on the visuals to understand the plot, and this is going to be very hard for me. Thankfully, there are English summaries of most K-dramas online, so if I watch something and feel like I'm just lost and need to get back on track, I'll head over to the summaries to catch myself up. This is how I hope to keep myself from turning the subs back on. I am not one to watch a show twice. I'm also not one to read the summaries and then watch the shows. I need the uncertainty of not knowing what happens next to keep me interested in the plot and motivated to try to understand. I know kids and even some adults enjoy rewatching or rereading books, and many language coaches or people on YouTube champion this as a great way to properly learn the language. It seems so logical, but it's not for me, for most things. When I studied German, I felt like such a terrible language learner in that I went from book to book and rarely reread anything. There were a few exceptions, but I never reread something directly after finishing it. More like a year later or so. I think this is the way I like to study, and despite being such a terrible student at German, in my mind, I learned tons of words and a lot of grammar. So I'm going to embrace that philosophy and try not to think about reviewing too much. I am certainly not going to mine sentences from native material. I think that distracts from engaging the material if you're constantly thinking of how to get it into a flashcard in Anki. I know I had that mindset in Japanese constantly, and I want to get rid of it for Korean. Korean shouldn't be as difficult a language for me as Japanese was, even if I am 10 years older. Anyway. So yeah, that's my update. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you got something out of it or enjoyed it. If you have any comments, I really would appreciate comments. Nobody's commented on my videos so far, at least on the content. So comments would be great. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.